We want to welcome everyone who is here, and we expect that there will be a few more come in. Before we get started, I'll just briefly introduce myself. My name is Rusty Butler. I'm the Associate Vice President for International Affairs and Diplomacy here at Utah Valley University, and also have another role as the Honorary Consul General for the Russian Federation in the state of Utah. We just hosted the Russian ambassador to the United States here, who lectured here at the university last week. And it's our honor to welcome Ambassador Zahir Tanin and his lovely wife, Dr. Zahir Tanin, who are in New York City. He is the permanent representative of Afghanistan to the United Nations. And my wife and I have known this wonderful couple for a long time, and we sincerely enjoy and appreciate them. First of all, I would just like to have any in the audience who have actually served in the military in Afghanistan, please stand, would you? Who have served in the military in Afghanistan. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you. How about those who have had sons, daughters, or brothers or sisters serve in Afghanistan? Raise your hands. Okay, there's more here. Thank you. Well, the ambassador has expressed his appreciation on occasions in the past for those who have served in his country, and I'm sure that he'll do so again today. But we're grateful to have you here, Mr. Ambassador, and I'll introduce him. He's extremely distinguished at the United Nations, where our university does work. The ambassador has served as the vice president of the General Assembly, which is one of the key bodies of the UN. That's the General Assembly is where the heads of state come and they all gather to make statements. I'm sure that you may have seen news of various General Assembly in the past, but he was the vice president of that for the 63rd and 65th sessions of the General Assembly, and has also been the acting president several times during high-level General Assembly sessions. He has been the vice chairman of the open-ended working group and chair of the intergovernmental negotiations on Security Council reform during the 63rd General Assembly, and was re-elected to that for the 64th, 65th, 66th, 67th, and 68th sessions as well. He has served at the United Nations for 9 years and is one of the very most senior people at that body, and as such has considerable influence and is well known and very highly regarded and highly respected. That much I know from talking with other permanent representatives at the United Nations. But before he came to the United Nations, he had an extremely distinguished career in journalism, which the very first time I got to know him surprised me that he had such a career in journalism. He spent 11 years with BBC World Services as a producer, and then as a senior producer and as editor of BBC World Services. And those of you who have seen BBC know that that's one of the world's most distinguished bodies when it comes to news and programming. He was editor for Afghanistan for the BBC Persian Pashto section for 3 years. He was vice president of the Journalist Union in Afghanistan. He co-authored The Communist Regime in Afghanistan, which is a study of the political and social changes from 78 to 92. He produced, or co-authored a landmark 29-part program series entitled The Oral History of Afghanistan in the 20th Century, which was produced and broadcast by BBC. So he has had a very distinguished career in journalism. He's a graduate of the Kabul Medical University, and he and his lovely wife have 2 children. And I might just add that my wife claims that his wife is a long-lost sister in another life. They get along very well. Those of you who know Afghanistan know that it is a very mountainous country, which is a focus of some clubs in this university, student clubs, on mountain sustainability. But they also have a very interesting sport called buskashi, which is one of the most entertaining, if you like a combination of American football without any padding and wild horsemanship, it's just about the ultimate type of sport for that. With that, please help me welcome Ambassador Tanin.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the Utah Valley University for hosting me today, and my good friend Dr. Rusty Butler for his kind introduction. I would also like to thank all of you for being here and acknowledge those in the audience who have bravely served in Afghanistan. You will always be friends of Afghanistan, and I would like to sincerely thank you for your service and for your sacrifices and you have made to our shared efforts for establishing a peaceful, stable, and prosperous Afghanistan. We are thankful for the United States, for American people, all men and women, every taxpayer, for their tremendous support and assistance over the last 14 years to Afghan government and Afghan people. This is my second visit to the Utah Valley University and to this great state, and it's a real pleasure to be back. The hospitality shown to me here is unparalleled, and I'm grateful to have the chance to experience it again. Ladies and gentlemen, in my talk today, I will focus on the situation in Afghanistan, the imperatives and challenges that we face, and I'm happy that we are in an atmosphere like a classroom where we can speak our mind easily rather than to be in a big tower. In 2001, when 9/11's tragedy brought us, the United States and Afghanistan together, Afghanistan was a fundamentally different country than it is today. In the aftermath of the fall of the Taliban in 2001, the state was unable to function. The government could barely provide services to the Afghan people. The country was almost bankrupt. Its national and international legitimacy had been eroded. Its institutions and civil society were almost completely destroyed. Millions of Afghans had fled the country, and Afghanistan had lost most of its human capital. Together with the United States and our other international partners, we have made significant progress since those days and have seen many of our objectives come to fruition. Over 6 million Afghan refugees have returned to the country after being forced to live outside their homes for years due to the war and conflict. Our status now based on a democratic constitution. Millions of Afghans have access to education and healthcare. New infrastructure has been built, and the Afghan people enjoy more freedom and rights than they have for decades. Although we face challenges, and although we continue to engage those who seek to reverse our progress, we are advancing peace. We are advancing a pace to stand independently, take command of our future, and realize a peaceful and secure Afghanistan. 10 years after the fall of the Taliban, and over a decade of our collective efforts, the end of foreign combat military mission and the transfer of military responsibility to Afghans became essential. Afghanistan, with the United States and its NATO partners, has embarked on a process to transfer military responsibility, security responsibility to Afghanistan, to the Afghan forces in 2010, and to have the international community to support the country in its development efforts. It's what was known as the Kabul process. The Kabul process has initiated in a conference in June 2010 in Kabul, which aimed at transition, and with this process, the transition period started. The transition from a mainly international-led efforts to a national-led efforts had three main components: security, political, and economic. First, security transition. The transition of security responsibilities has taken place in 4 phases. A gradual withdrawal of NATO US forces took place, and the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces have fully taken the responsibility of the security and defense of the country. While the aim was to end the combat mission and put the Afghan National Defense Forces in the center, it was also imperative to establish a new international mission which is based on training, advising, and assistance, and that mission is called as Resolute Support Mission. It's still NATO-led mission, but it is not part of the combat mission against the insurgents and armed extremist groups. The decision for security transition was undertaken or took place after long consultations, collective work, and decisions made at NATO summits in Lisbon in 2011, in Chicago 2012, and Wales in the United Kingdom in 2014. The Afghan forces are now fully in charge in the face of continuing security threats to peace and stability in Afghanistan and in the region. Second, political transition. This summer, Afghanistan has a successful transfer of power from an elected president to another elected president in a historical election in which over 8 million people casting their vote, despite security threats and tremendous dangers to their life. More than 40% of the voters were women. Our democratic elections was challenging and protracted, but it resulted in an agreed solution essential for the stability and peace in a time that the NATO combat mission was ended in Afghanistan. A compromise at the end of the election, based on a strong belief that winner did not take it all, led to President Ashraf Ghani's decision to establish a national unity government. This allowed for enhanced unity in the country and created a framework for a larger participation across all sectors of society, including those who are still fighting against us. At the same time, it's a political platform that can involve political, ethnic, societal segments to work in the interest of the future. Moreover, such a framework would allow the government to move ahead with elections reform, constitutional reform, next elections, parliamentary elections, provincial elections, district elections, and opening more political space, including political participation, pluralism, and strengthening political and civil rights. Third is economic transition. Afghanistan is still an mainly aid-dependent economy. The role of foreign assistance continues to be essential for Afghanistan's economy, despite strides and progress made in the last decade. An investment made establishing a new social and economic infrastructure that I have mentioned. Afghanistan is still far away from self-reliance and will do a lot for a sustainable and functional economy. A transition from a mainly aid-dependent economy to a mainly non-independent economy is not going to happen overnight. Yet, with continued international assistance and a comprehensive reform agenda, Afghanistan over the next 10 years will be able, which we call it the transformation decade, to stand on its own feet. Let me now share with you some thoughts about the challenges and the imperatives in today's Afghanistan's situation. Afghanistan has entered a new phase in its history from the beginning of January 2015, characterized by the end of transition and the beginning of the transformation decade. The National Unity Government, under the leadership of President Ashraf Ghani, since assuming the office last September, has undertaken necessary steps in dealing with serious challenges to peace and stability, and has set about a comprehensive reform agenda in order to achieve the goals of transformation and establishment of a prosperous and democratic Afghanistan. At the core of this reform strategy of President Ghani and the National Unity Government is a compact of stability and prosperity, which can be seen at national, regional, and international levels. At national level first, Afghanistan is committed to enhancing its focus on peace, security, and well-being of its citizens, governance, rule of law, human rights, women's rights, and addressing poverty and employment. I will share with you some thoughts on two main components of this reform, comprehensive reform agenda. First, security and peace, and second, economic development and governance. While the security situation in the country remains a challenge, and the enemies of Afghanistan continue to test the resilience of our forces, the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces, despite the skepticism and media speculation that we are familiar with, including the US media, have shown a strong ability not only to prevent and neutralize the enemies from succeeding or taking over some provinces or districts to create territorial bases inside the country, but to move from defensive to offensive positions in many areas. However, a lasting peace cannot be achieved through military means alone. A lasting peace needs a political solution, diplomatic efforts, and more engagement of all segments of the society for building a better future for the country. The new government of Afghanistan, under President Ghani, has taken bold steps to reinvigorate peace and reconciliation process with the Taliban and those who are still engaged in fighting against us, but potentially can be envisaged as part of a peace process when they decide to stop relations with Al-Qaeda and accept Afghan framework of constitution. It's key when we talk about the peace process that we make reconciliation process successful, and it can be successful if there is unity between Afghans regarding the issue of inclusion of the Taliban, and Afghans are not divided about that. The full support of society is crucial to peace efforts. However, peace talks cannot succeed if the Taliban are able still to benefit from the sanctuaries which give them the basis for operations, strategic guidance, receiving military and financial aid, and the continuation of support through these sanctuaries. With the end of sanctuaries, the encouragement factor will be in place for the peace process. To this end, President Ghani has initiated a paradigm shift in the country's relations with Pakistan. He traveled to Pakistan in his first days in office. He met with both the civilian and military leaders of all military leaders, and those who are able to facilitate an end of war in Afghanistan. He focused on ways to overcome the mistrust between the two countries. Which in the last 10 years were in a hostile relations, not in peace. The engagement with Pakistan is vital, of course, to end the war in Afghanistan. But also there are other regional players, particularly China, that can, and some our Arab partners and friends, that can play an important role in search for a better outcome for a peaceful solution in Afghanistan. The second part of agenda for economic development and strengthening the good governance is essential for the reform agenda, and it's the compact of stability and prosperity. Let me touch upon three main areas when it comes to our economic and development agenda. The first priority is fighting corruption. Recognizing the corrosive effects of corruption, the government of Afghanistan has already taken steps to tackle the endemic scourge of corruption and its underlying drivers. There were a number of cases, including a scandal of Kabul Bank, a bank that was in fact looted by a number of people through wrong loans and other activities. This file was taken back, and the government decided to focus on that and to reinvestigate it back. There was also focus on the way the contracts were given in our defense ministry, the way that the budget, the international assistance were spent through the Law and Trust Fund, which includes the Interior Ministry. And also there has been an important focus on how the international agencies, international organizations who are involved in managing the resources and assistance can do better and can do different. Second element in this agenda is advancing good governance. The government of Afghanistan is committed to strengthening democratic institutions, promoting the rule of law, enhancing human rights, particularly the rights of women and girls, and undertaking comprehensive reform of electoral law, justice system, and other institutions. Third, it's essential for the development agenda to create sustainability. Promoting economic and fiscal sustainability, therefore, is becoming paramount for the government. Afghanistan is committed to enhancing productivity, mobilizing domestic revenue, and expanding private sector investment, growth, and employment opportunities with the ultimate aid of reducing Afghanistan dependence to donor support and achieving long-term sustainability and prosperity in the country. The illicit drug economy is a grave concern, and to this end, the government is committed to comprehensive response to combat this menace in collaboration with our regional and international partners. These two main components in security and in the area of economic development are crucial at the national level for this compact of stability and prosperity, which I defined it as the core of reform agenda. At the regional level, this compact also deals with at two levels. While Afghanistan is committed to a new phase of engagement and cooperation with the neighbors based on national and shared interests, it's aware that there is an immediate threat to the region, to the wider region, to be dealt with, but at the same time, there is a prospect for future cooperation that's important for all countries in the region and wider region. With the threat, what we see is the changing ecology of terror, not only in our region, but in a wider region, which include Middle East, North Africa, parts of Africa, but at the same time, it's not far from Southeast Central Asia. It is witnessing the new wave of violent extremism, which poses a serious threat to all region. Countering violent, borderless extremist groups like ISIS or ISIL, we call it Daesh, aimed at three crippling objectives: dehumanization of people, demodernization of the society, and destatization of the regions, of the countries. I would like to use that as they're attacking the state, they're destroying the state. So this is three characterization of their effort in a wider region, and just countering that is a regional and global imperative. Groups like ISIS, and ISIS is now trying to expand its reach to my country, Afghanistan, and in an attempt to turn Afghanistan into a new meeting ground of terrorism. With the borderless character of this group, they may think how to take the war beyond Afghanistan simultaneously. To this end, peace and security is not only vital for Afghanistan, but for all region and global world. In dealing with this threat of terror and violent extremism, we need to work together with all countries in the region. And it would be central to the cooperation between the countries that are threatened by the same threat, by the same danger in many regions of the greater part of the world that we belong to. But there is also, apart from countering and dealing with the threat, there is a greater prospect for cooperation and prosperity if the region is able to work together. Our new engagement with the countries in the region is aimed at that. President Ghani, in the last 6 months, traveled to Pakistan, to China, to Azerbaijan, to Turkmenistan, to Saudi Arabia, to United Arab Emirates. He also attended the SARC meeting in Kathmandu. It was in Kathmandu, if I'm not wrong. He was just on Sunday in Iran, talking to the leaders of Iran, and he's going to be this week in India. Of course, there were many more other contacts. In his view, in the core of his development agenda, is the idea of connectivity of the region. In Afghanistan, as in the heart of Asia, as a capital of Asia, in fact, between South, East, West, Central, East, West, Central, and South Asia, is a connecting bridge, and it's a hub of transit. So there are existing projects, and there are new ideas how to connect the whole region through transport, energy, and also trade and investment. a continent that in next 25 years will be the main economy of the world, cannot work, cannot advance without overcoming these geographical obstacles and without having Afghanistan as a center that is connecting all these parts of Asia. When we should have in mind that Afghanistan is not only neighboring 3 countries of Central Asia, but also Pakistan, Iran, and has an important border with China. And we live in a neighborhood, in a region where 3 main important powers of our time, China, Russia, India, are situated in this neighborhood. And then at the same time, you have 2 important regions rich with hydrocarbon, oil and gas resources, Middle East and Central Asia, where they can be connected to the markets of the South Asia, to China, through Afghanistan. So this is why we think some of the projects that we have in place, like the energy corridor of Kasa 1000, which is connecting Kyrgyzstan, which is bringing power from, or transferring power from Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan to Afghanistan and Pakistan. So providing 2 countries with the energy resources, that is very important. We also embarked on a transit road that's connecting Afghanistan to Turkey through Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan. It's reducing the time of sending the goods to 5 hours, to 5 days. So Afghanistan can be connected in 5 days and transportation of its goods to Europe through Turkey in 5 days. But it's also, when we talk about the bridging position, it's the South Asia's economy that can be connected to Europe through Afghanistan. The TAPI project, Turkey, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, which is about the building of an important gas pipeline, is from Turkmenistan to Pakistan and India. That is one of the ambitious known projects that will have a very big effect on the economy of the whole region. And we are at the final stage of realization of this project. There are many other projects, but also the focus on how to expand the trades between the region, how to have more investment in Afghanistan, and also to see how the natural resources of Afghanistan can be used in a more in a way that's important for Afghanistan, for the whole region, in the global economy. Afghanistan is one of the richest country with natural resources. That's estimated to be a $3 trillion with the $3 trillion value. So this is the prospect. I am not going into more details. It's the prospect of cooperation and work in the region. The compact of this compact or reform agenda at the international level is focused on the support of the international community and to continue, which is crucial for the future of Afghanistan, for stability, for prosperity, and building a democratic nation. This last December offered a chance for us to revisit the accountability framework that we have created with the donor countries in 2012 in Tokyo. The donor communities in Afghanistan gathered in London, where the Afghan government, the president of Afghanistan, came with the reform agenda that I talked about, which also was the most serious reflection of the fact that Afghanistan is taking the sovereignty agenda seriously, and it's moving towards Afghan ownership and Afghan leadership. As President Ghani has said, we have no more interest in perpetuating a childish dependence than you have in being saddled with the poor family members who lacks the energy and drive to get out and find a job. We are not going to be the lazy uncle job. Most importantly, within this, at the international level, the government of Afghanistan has, since assuming the office, the new government has focused on resetting its relations with the United States and our other NATO partners. Last October's overwhelming and immediate parliamentary approval of the bilateral security agreement with the United States and the status of force agreements with NATO testify to our desire to continue our international partnerships. The recent visit of President Ghani to Washington was a historical visit, a historical step, shaping the new phase of strategic relations between Afghanistan and the United States. During this visit, a number of agreements were made, including continuing military training and financial assistance by the United States until 2017, an agreement that will provide Afghanistan with a capacity building program through the U.S. Treasury Office of Technical Assistance, and a U.S. aid commitment to provide up $800 million for the Afghan government to utilize for its own initiatives in return for transparency and reform agenda and accountability, of course. In addition, as a part of a broader bilateral security relationship, the two presidents, President Obama and President Ghani, agreed to continue to dialogue on U.S. and Afghan counterterrorism objectives, to include the development of joint counterterrorism partnership strategy through and beyond 2016. The development of the joint counterterrorism strategy will be critically important in defining the levels of U.S. engagement beyond 2016. There are many commissions, a number of commissions were established to overview the continuation of our agreements and how it's going to be implemented. President Ghani was able to address the Congress, talk to the U.S. Leaders, to the U.S. media, to the U.S. To think tanks, CEOs, academic circles, and to share his views, which I think was an important impetus to our, at the beginning of the new phase of relations between Afghanistan and the United States. Before concluding, I wanted to quote President Ghani in the line what he said before when he was in the United States, and I think he was in Pentagon. He said, Afghanistan is not going to be a burden. We are going to put our house in order. We are a frontline state. Afghanistan will never be defeated by terrorists. Terrorism is a threat, he said. It's evil, but we, the people of Afghanistan, are willing to speak truth to terror by saying no. They will never overwhelm us, and they will never subdue us. We are going to overcome. he said, he continued, in this endeavor, our partnership with the United States is foundational because we will be the first line of defense for freedom globally. End of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share with you my belief that our collective efforts over the last 14 years, the blood spilled and the lives lost, have enabled Afghanistan to become a full member of the international community with a strong foundation to be as a stable, peaceful, and democratic country. The time for Afghanistan to take full responsibility as a sovereign nation has come, and with the support of the United States and our all international partners, now and in the future, we can achieve this critical goal.